Speaker, and I do want to pay tribute to Peter Kent, who was very important in establishing the park. And of course, as I acknowledged, this is a park that all political parties of all stripes can take credit for. But in terms of the wage gap, I think one of the major ways that we've been able to address it is through our agreements with the provinces on $10 a day childcare. I think it is a transformational program that's going to support women, particularly to enter the workforce, but also to advance in their careers.
Statements by members. The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, every member of this House, whether you're a Conservative, Liberal, New Democrat, member of the Green Party, or the Bloc, understand in terms of what's taking place in Europe, Madam Speaker. And around the world, there is a great movement of Ukrainian solidarity, one that wants to see Ukraine prevail. The heroes of Ukraine are making a difference that go far beyond the boundaries of Ukraine. We're very fortunate here as members of Parliament because over the next couple of months, we're going to have some wonderful young ladies, Madam Speaker. Over 40 Ukrainian interns are going to be in Ottawa over the next 2 months, Madam Speaker. And I know that they will be contributing in a very real way for us. I know for myself personally, I'll take the extra time to get a little better understanding of what's happening in Ukraine as a direct result. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise to thank my good friend, mentor, and community leader, Energizer Billy Walker, for his 11 years of service as the Member of Provincial Parliament for Bruce Grey Owen Sound. First elected in 2011, Bill has been a strong advocate for our riding throughout his time at Queen's Park. Since becoming part of the provincial government in 2018, he has served as the Chief Government Whip, the Minister of Government and Consumer Services, the Associate Minister of Energy, and most recently as the Deputy Speaker. Earlier this year, Bill announced he would not be seeking another term in the upcoming provincial election, signaling an end to his remarkable political career. Some highlights of MPP Walker's career include securing funding for the new Markdale Hospital, along with 5 long-term care facilities across the riding, the opening of 3 new schools and child care centres, and over $420 million in funding for projects across Bruce and Grey counties. On behalf of the people of Bruce Grey Owen Sound, my personal thanks to Bill, his wife Michaela, and their sons Zach and Ben for their sacrifice and service to our riding. I wish Bill all the best in his future challenges.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to acknowledge the investiture as Officer to the Order of Canada of Mr. Thomas Forne, a remarkable constituent of St. John's East. Mr. Forne demonstrates a fervent commitment to Newfoundland and Labrador and has been a strong ambassador to the preservation of our province's unique heritage, as well as helping to nurture a thriving future. A lifelong volunteer, Mr. Forne is a strong supporter of our province's talented artists, writers, and performers, and he has been a champion of the local entrepreneurial ecosystem as an angel investor, board member, advisor, and mentor. In 2003, he joined the inaugural board of the Rooms Corporation and was instrumental in the Where Once They Stood, We Stand campaign, a First World War project that includes the Royal Newfoundland Regiment Gallery that was created to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Beaumont Hamel. To Tom, his wife Susan, the 2 sons, alongside their families from all Newfoundland.
The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia. Madam Speaker, we are seeing a disturbing rise in all these toxic forms of hate in Canada as far-right extremists mobilize in our country. We see this manifest in despicable acts of hate and violence across the country. Canadians need to stand up and speak out against far-right extremism and hate. We do that by fighting hate in all its toxic forms. Canadians have our next opportunity to speak out next Tuesday, May 10th, as the Stand With Asians Coalition and other important groups mark a day of action against increasing anti-Asian racism and hate. Cities representing over 15 million Canadians have already marked this day with proclamations. Madam Speaker, some of the most fundamental freedoms are freedom from hate and freedom from fear. Let's all stand together for freedom from hate in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Madam Speaker. May 7th is National Child and Youth Mental Health Day. It's about building caring connections between youth and the caring adults in their lives. That's why we're investing $39 million to promote the mental health of children, youth, and others at risk of experiencing inequities, and $7.5 million to Kids Help Phone to provide crisis services to children and youth. We also launched the Wellness Together portal in 2020 to provide free, confidential, multilingual, 24/7 online support. Earlier this year, we unveiled Pocket Well, a companion app that makes the portal even more accessible to youth. Our government will continue to support youth mental health, and I encourage all parliamentarians and all Canadians to build caring relationships with the young people around them and support them in caring for their mental health. One good thing to come out of the pandemic is that we have certainly shown more empathy. And when you see the world through someone else's eyes, you understand them better.
Edmonton Manning.
Madam Speaker, every year about 1,000 Canadians are killed at workplace accidents or die of work-related injuries. No matter how careful we are, sometimes accidents happen. These human tragedies affect individuals and families in my riding of Edmonton Manning. That's why I support the Steps for Life Walk taking place on May 14 at Edmonton's Rundle Park. The money raised by walkers will be used to help families deal with threats for life. Let's the walk organizers connect those dealing with workplace death or injury with people who understand their situation because they have themselves experienced it, providing one-on-one peer support, group networking, and links to community agencies. Thank you for the walkers and donors of this first in-person Step for Life walk since 2019. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Brampton Centre.
Madam Speaker, earlier this week, Muslims in Canada and around the world celebrated Eid al-Fitr. Eid al-Fitr is a festival that follows Ramadan's month after fasting. It's a spiritual celebration of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gift of the strength and endurance that the fasting required. It is also a time to forgive and to seek forgiveness, to reflect on compassion, charity, and generosity. In some countries, Eid is a 3-day festival, but in Canada, it's generally a 1-day family holiday. When the community engages in prayers, feasting, family get-togethers, spending time with friends and neighbors, exchanging gifts, and helping those who are in need. I want to thank all those who have contributed so much to building our great country and our amazing society as a place where everyone is free to celebrate their beliefs and cultures and their religious practices are respected. Thank you so much.
Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In 1954, my mother, Kate Taylor, a newly graduated nurse, worked in Moose Factory on James Bay. In 1979, my sister India began her nursing career in the North, in Hay River, Northwest Territories. Then, as now, nurses are the backbone of patient care. Nurses step up and work very long hours when needed, and no time was this more true than during the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nurses should be celebrated every day. Let's all thank the nurses in our communities. Nursing Week is May 9th through 15th, coinciding with the birthday of nurse and social reformer Florence Nightingale. I am proud of the 5 nurses following in her footsteps, running it for all parties in our upcoming Ontario election. I am pleased that one of them, an outstanding nursing person, Marjan Kasserlou, is in mine. To all the nurses working in healthcare settings in Aurora, Oak Ridges, and Richmond Hill, and across our country, thank you. You will always be heroes.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Since the rollout of the Liberals' MAID regime, we've heard harrowing stories of folks who were abused and pressured to receive a medically assisted death by the same medical system that failed to offer them adequate care. Luckily, in some of these cases, there was an intervention to stop the process. In others, sadly, those people are no longer with us to tell their story. Now with the government becoming the legislative branch for certain radical lobby groups and blindly expanding medically assisted death to people with physical disabilities and mental illness, we're hearing more stories of abuse and victimization. Stories of people who've received or are pursuing a medically assisted death because they have a disability and can't afford adequate housing, or because life has become so unaffordable that they no longer have the means to live or to pay for treatment. If this was what the government had in mind when they expanded the regime, what will it look like when it's expanded to medically assisted death for minors? The Liberals must ensure that no more Canadians are victimized by this medically assisted death regime.
Member for London North Centre.
Madam Speaker, I rise to once again wish Eid Mubarak to all Muslims who finished observing the holy month of Ramadan this past Monday. As a friend of mine put it so eloquently, Ramadan is a month where Muslims eat less and reflect more, where they sleep less and pray more, where they spend less and donate more, where they watch less and read more, where they judge less and forgive more. It's always a privilege to attend iftar gatherings in London through this special month and to see the strength, resolve, and dedication of the community. This weekend, I'm looking forward to being in London and attending the first ever Muslim Lifestyle Expo taking place at the Western Fair Agriplex and running from today until Sunday. This gathering, hosted by the Events Co., will showcase artists, entertainment, halal food trucks, and numerous vendors offering a range of products. Please show your support of this inaugural expo. It's events like these that showcase the multiculturalism that makes Canada the very best country in the world. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Madam Speaker, yesterday Canada and Quebec lost a great reporter, a famous author, Mario Roy. I'm sorry to have to interrupt the member and ask him to start over again. Could I have order, please? Order in the House and a bit of respect for the Honourable Member making a statement. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable, you may begin over. Madam Speaker, yesterday Canada and Quebec lost a great journalist, an editorialist and author. Mario Roy died in Montreal after a rich career as a reporter. He started in 1981 and reported on the National Assembly and on arts and culture. He became an editorialist in 89 and occupied that position for 15 years until his death. He wrote a number of books. Mario Roy defended a number of more conservative values, and even if I didn't always share his opinions and his editorials, his articles brought an important voice to political debate. On behalf of my colleagues in the House of Commons, my most sincere condolences to his partner and 2 children.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, every day 4 Canadians are killed at the hands of an impaired driver. And yet this Liberal government wants to go soft on impaired drivers with their Soft on Crime Bill C-5. The bill will allow criminals convicted of impaired driving causing death to serve their sentence from home. At the Justice Committee, the Director of Victim Services of MAD Canada characterized Bill C-5 as hurtful and harmful to victims of impaired driving. The same is true of victims of sexual assault, kidnapping, and human trafficking, given Bill C-5's reckless expansion of house arrest for these and other serious offences. While the Liberals stand up for criminals, Conservatives will continue to stand up for victims by fighting Bill C-5.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The war in Ukraine passed the 70-day mark this week, and we stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Could I ask the member to start over again? Order, please. Order while members are making statements. The Honourable Member, start over, please. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The war in Ukraine passed the 70-day mark this week, and we stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian people. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the generosity, compassion, and empathy of Canadians for the people of Ukraine, both in terms of the aid that's been sent over there and the work being done here to welcome people fleeing the atrocities of this war. I'd like to highlight the coming together of the community of Châteauguay-Lacolle, which immediately formed a welcoming committee, a group of organizations and individuals. Already, our volunteers, coordinated by the indefatigable Nicoletta Carolan, are supporting some 20 people and preparing to take in many more families. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Madam Speaker, I am proud to rise today in this House to tell you about an incredible living history museum in my riding, Fanshawe Pioneer Village, and its project to preserve and restore London's fugitive slave chapel. The slave chapel, built in 1848, served as a place of gathering and worship for London's black community until 1868 and was one of the terminus points on the Underground Railroad. The chapel was gifted to Fanshawe Pioneer Village to ensure it is protected and promoted properly. It's not only important to London's black history, but also to Canadian history. The preservation of this influential building at Fanshawe Pioneer Village will ensure it is showcased, respected, and honored now, and offers a unique educational experience to future generations. The village has received much community support from local groups, but needs federal government support. As it stands, the building is at risk of further deterioration. If we do not act now, a key piece of London's history could be lost. I've written to the Minister of Heritage requesting funding and now call upon this government to support this historical community treasure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Madam Speaker, Camille Lorrain, father of the Charter of the French language, would have been 100 years old today. On this occasion, all the ministers responsible for the French language over the past 3 decades paid tribute to him in an open letter. They reiterated the importance of maintaining constant action to value and promote our national language. Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I'd like to take this opportunity to call on them for help. The federal government is going to war with the Charter of the French language with its Bill C-13 reforming the Official Languages Act. Ottawa is giving itself legal priority over Quebec in order to prevent the application of the Quebec Charter to businesses that are federally regulated. It makes the application of the Charter of the French language optional. It gives companies the choice between the Charter or Canadian bilingualism, the Air Canada model, the model of least effort and of contempt. 100 years after Camille Lorrain's birth, our fight for the future of French continues and is one of the crucial battles. It's taking place here now in Ottawa. Let's mobilize.
The liberty to speak freely, we cannot profess to be truly free. It is through the use of speech that most of us share our thoughts, our ideas, and our beliefs. This propels us forward. It facilitates innovation. Incredible. It also provides us with a means to criticize, to challenge, and to correct when we believe someone to be in error. This includes the government of the day, no matter the party at the helm. If we believe progressing as a society is important, then we must contend for free speech. After all, it is the very foundation of democracy. Which is why it is beyond alarming to me, then, that this government is moving forward with legislation that will censor free speech. Bill C-11, Bill C-18, and the upcoming Online Harms Bill. These bills are a concerted effort to take autonomy away from individuals and put more power, more control in the hands of government. I urge this House, therefore, and all Canadians to stand on guard and to do all that they can to contend for and protect free speech, for it is the very foundation upon which all other freedoms in this country are formed.
Member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This coming week, Canadians will be celebrating and thanking our nurses for all their hard work, dedication, and care they provide to our communities. From assisting with life-threatening crises to delivering beautiful babies and caring for the elderly, nurses perform many of the most strenuous and difficult tasks in medicine and healthcare. As professionals who perform essential points of healthcare services, nurses serve as the first point of contact for many Canadians. Through this pandemic, we have seen countless nurses step up and take on a new role and additional responsibilities to ensure that Canadians had access to stable healthcare, hospitals, and treatments. Our government pushed for anti-harassment legislation to protect our healthcare workers in Bill C-3 so that they could go to work, so they did not have to worry about violence in the workplace. We all owe a debt of gratitude to nurses nurses for their invaluable work in our community. So thank you, merci miigwech, to all nurses. And Madam Speaker, happy Mother's Day to you. And to, of course, a special shout out to my mother, Linda, my wife, Lisa, and my mother-in-laws, Carol and Claudette. Thank you.
Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Gas is $1.94.9 per liter in Barrie today. Enbridge Line 5 provides more than 50% of the fuel to Eastern Canada. An application was filed in U.S. federal court to shut down this pipeline, and so far the Liberals have done nothing to oppose this U.S. court action. If Line 5 is shut down, there will surely be gas shortages and spikes in the price of gas that will cause an already unaffordable situation for families and businesses to get much worse. Are the Liberals going to fight this, or are they just going to roll over on Line 5 like they did with Keystone XL?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for the question. The continued operation of Line 5 is non-negotiable. We will take appropriate steps to ensure the continued safe operation of this critical infrastructure, and we continue to work closely with the owner of Line 5. Canada and the United States continue to be engaged in a process under the 1977 Transit Pipelines Agreement to ensure the continued operation of Line 5. And until this issue is resolved, I will continue to raise it with my U.S. counterparts, as I have been doing on an ongoing basis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
The passport situation in this country is so bad that people are actually camping out overnight outside Canadian government passport offices just to receive service. This is a complete failure on the part of the Liberals, not our public service, to plan for a surge of renewals that everyone knew was coming. Canadians are angry and they're anxious, having to cancel long-anticipated trips and to see loved ones or vacations because of this government's failure to deliver the most basic of services. No excuses. When can Canadians expect a return to normal processing times?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for his question. Madam Speaker, Canadians are travelling again, and there's been an unprecedented volume increase in the demand for passports for those who wish to travel, and it's resulted in long lineups and wait times for in-person service. And we do understand that the situation is difficult and stressful for many. The minister has been traveling across the country visiting Service Canada locations to hear directly from frontline staff who've been working day, night, and weekends to alleviate the long lines and the wait times. We've hired 500 new employees, and the minister and the department will continue to turn every rock to find solutions to serve Canadians to the service they're entitled to.
Barrie Innisfil.
Let's be honest, Madam Speaker, this whole mess and the inability to provide even the most basic government services like a passport renewal is entirely on the minister and these Liberals, not the public service. Everyone knew, and people that would be wanting to travel was coming out of COVID. Everyone knew that the 10-year passports were expiring. Everyone, it seems, except this government. Yet here we are with long lineups around government buildings and phones not being answered. Maybe it's time to get people back to their workplaces and rehire those who've been fired because of vaccine mandates to fix this. Wouldn't the minister agree with me on that?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the honourable member for his questions. Madam Speaker, we've been preparing for this for some time. As early as December, we hired 500 new employees to process passports. We opened 3 new processing centres around the country, and over the weekends, we've opened as many locations as possible to serve Canadians. In addition to that, over 300 Service Canada centres are processing passport applications for Canadians, and we continue to do more to alleviate this unprecedented level of demand for service.
Député de Bellechasse, les Etchemins-Lévis.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. Before the end of the pandemic, people are starting to travel again. People need to renew their passports, but the delays are endless. Some passport offices require an appointment, but to make an appointment, some people have to wait for hours on the phone. It's completely unacceptable. The problem is that the government hasn't yet authorized the full return to work of Passport Canada employees. What's it waiting for?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Madam Speaker, we continue to work to open as many client counters as possible in passport offices. As I mentioned before, we've hired 500 new employees, and we continue to work at workload management and processing technology to increase efficiency on our processing call centers and in our offices. We've extended hours both on weekdays and weekends, and we continue to provide as much service as physically possible to Canadians for the service they are entitled to.
Honorable député de Bellechasse, les Échemins-Lévis.
Madame la Présidente, les problèmes.
Madam Speaker, the problems that we're encountering were predictable. Working remotely can work to a certain extent, but passport services require people to be there in the office. Public servants need to be working in person. So why is it that Service Canada offices are not full of staff? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for her question. As mentioned before, we've expanded the passport intake services at over 300 Service Canada offices across the country. We hired and trained over 500 staff already in last December. We opened 3 new processing centres across the country and simplified the services. Canadian Service Canada and our public service have been working night and day, and we need to thank them for all the work they've done throughout the pandemic. Madam Speaker, we continue to work with public servants to make sure that Canadians are getting the service they are entitled to. Thank you.
Honorable député de Saint-Jean.
Madame la Présidente, un mois.
1 month, just 1 month after announcing that he would charter flights for people displaced by the war in Ukraine, the Minister of Transport admits that he hasn't sent a single plane. He has an agreement with airlines. The planes are ready. It's his government that is putting the brakes on because it's complicated, because refugees are on the move. Women who have found a way to leave their country and flee from the Russian army with their children will surely find a way to get to their flight. When will an air bridge be ready?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire du ministre de l'Immigration.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration. Thank you. Madam Speaker, from the beginning of January, 21,000 Ukrainians have arrived in Canada. As announced, we are going to charter flights to welcome even more Ukrainians to Canada. I would also like to mention in this place the great generosity of Canadians and Quebecers who have been helping us to welcome and to mobilize during this historic moment for Canada. So I want to thank the member for her question. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Madam Speaker, I can guarantee that the Minister has planes grounded in our airports and there's not a single Ukrainian family in them. I guarantee it. In the Laurentians alone, there are 60 families opening their homes to refugees, 260 volunteers. They've been ready for weeks. All that's missing is the refugees. And why? To quote the director of Coffret, Lynn Chaloux, they don't have the money to buy plane tickets. If there were charter flights, they'd get here. Mr. Speaker, everyone's waiting for Ottawa. When are they going to launch their flights? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As I said, 24,000 Ukrainians arrived here and hundreds are arriving every single day. I would also like to mention that we implemented a new program thanks to a partnership with Air Canada, a foundation, and others that will allow us to welcome 10,000 Ukrainians and their families with free flights. More than 2,000 Canadians gave over 140 million Aeroplan points to the Canada-Ukraine Fund. We will always do more, not less.
Patrie.
Ça fait 2 ans que les délais dans les traitements de dossiers en immigration.
For 2 years now, delays in immigration processing have been appalling. Thousands of people are waiting to arrive. The government's not treating them with respect. These are human tragedies. Their lives are disrupted. Their dreams are shattered. The Liberals are watching and doing nothing. They tell people to contact their MP, but our offices can only handle 5 offices at a time, and it makes no sense at all when we get dozens of desperate calls a day. When will the Liberals invest the resources necessary to treat these people with a minimum of respect. The Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question. Last year, we had 4,500 new permanent residents, the greatest number of newcomers in a year in Canada's history. During the first quarter of this year, I will note that we've hit another record, processing 157,000 requests for permanent residency, delivering 100,000 work permits, and 10,000 study visas a week. Listen, we've invested significantly and will continue to be there who choose Canada.
Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Canada's immigration backlog now exceeds 2 million people, with significant backlog in every stream. The minister said he was going to fix it, but the backlog is increasing, not decreasing. Afghans and Ukraine nationals in urgent need to get to safety are marred in red tape. Families are separated, lives are put on hold. For the caregiver stream, processing time is not even available. Passport offices are jammed. My constituents are having to camp overnight to get their passport. Will the minister stop using COVID as an excuse for the growing backlog and do his job to fix this broken immigration system?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I thank the Honourable Member for her questions and certainly her advocacy on this. Madame Présidente, last year we welcomed more than 405 new permanent residents, the greatest number of newcomers in a year in Canadian history. In the first quarter of this year, we hit even more record, processing over 157,000 permanent residence applications, issuing more than 100,000 work permits, and we're processing over 10,000 study permits per week. As we have further boosting the processing capacity at ERCC with an investment of 80.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Inflation is skyrocketing under the Liberal government and wages are not keeping up. Statistics Canada said hourly wages increased 3.3% from April 2021, well short of the 6.7% inflation rate. The central bank raised its benchmark rate 0.5 point in April, and the governor hinted that he will likely do so again. The Liberal government is destroying our economy and only making life more expensive for Canadians. So when will this government take this inflation crisis seriously and provide real relief for Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism.
Thank you, Madam President. And the budget that we've just tabled includes many measures that puts money directly into the pockets of Canadians. I'm thinking of the one-time payment for all Canadians having difficulty accessing affordable housing, our continued funding for the Canada Child Benefit, which is indexed to inflation. And based on what I've been hearing in this House from the Conservatives and their leadership debate last night, they have absolutely nothing concrete to propose to Canadians in order to help them face the cost of living increase that's due to the war in Ukraine, Madam President.
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
The cost of government is ballooning the cost of living. Gas in my hometown this morning was a disturbing $1.92, and it's supposed to go up again this weekend. Every single day I'm hearing distressing examples of the impact that overdue bills and food prices are having on many people's day-to-day lives. Madam Speaker, when will this government start listening to people and turn their talking points into action?
Great question.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we've reduced taxes for the middle class on 2 occasions, and the Conservatives voted against it. We have created a Canada Child Benefit that has helped lift over 1 million people out of poverty. In our budget, we have concrete measures in order to help Canadians buy a first home, in order to help Canadians pay for childcare. Madam Speaker, we have been there for Canadians, and the Conservatives have not.
Le député de Beauce.
Madame la Présidente, avec un taux d'inflation à son plus haut niveau.
With inflation at its highest level in 30 years, Canadians are struggling to make ends meet. To add fuel to the fire, Service Canada can't keep up with the number of VI claims and fraud. In my riding, some citizens haven't gotten a check since November because of delays due to investigating fraud. These are Canadians who can't wait anymore. They didn't have extra money to begin with. The mental and physical health of these Canadians is at risk. When will the government add the resources needed to finally reduce these endless delays?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madame la Présidente, je remercie mon collègue pour sa question.
I thank my colleague for the question. I would like to call his attention to our budget, which contains real measures to help all Canadians. We're talking about a single payment for Canadians that are having a hard time finding affordable housing, measures to help Canadians buy a first home, and I hope that the Conservatives will vote for this budget because it will help Canadians.
Honorable député de Montmagny-Lillet-Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Madame la Présidente, l'inflation touche tout le monde.
Inflation affects everyone and every sector. The price of diesel is nearly $3 a litre. It's unbelievable. The impacts are real, and they affect farmers in particular, who depend on fuel for transportation and machinery to farm. They were already stifled by the carbon tax, and now they're being suffocated. The government blames external factors for the situation, but it is responsible. Will the government do what it promised to do and actually help farmers? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Agriculture. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. The war in Ukraine is causing a great deal of inflation. It's serious, and my heart is with farmers. The minister made announcements recently to help farmers deal with those increases. We're working on the issue of fertilizer. We know it's important for farmers. It's important to get fertilizer into the country, and we're also working with the sector to make sure that fertilizer is available at a fair price.
Honourable member for North Okanagan-Shuswap.
Speaker, only this NDP Liberal government could be capable of killing two economic drivers with one blow. The proposed surtax on vessels will destroy capital investments in the charter boat industry, kill jobs, and drive investment out of the country. Without new charter vessels coming into the market here, tourists will choose to go elsewhere to spend their vacation dollars, further crippling Canada's tourism recovery. Does the Finance Minister understand that her high-tax regime will do nothing but kill jobs in the manufacturing and tourism sectors?
They don't care.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, to make sure that we have the resources needed to invest in Canadians and help our economy continue to recover from the pandemic, we're ensuring that the wealthiest pay their fair share. Our government is introducing a luxury tax that would apply on the sale of new luxury cars and aircraft with a retail price over $100,000 and new boats over $250,000. We are currently studying this measure at Finance Committee and will continue to work with Canada's entrepreneurs and businesses to grow our economy and to make life more affordable.
Member for Langley-Aldergrove.
Madam Speaker, with the average price of a starter home in some parts of Metro Vancouver now reaching the $1 million mark, many people are giving up hope of ever owning their first home. It just keeps getting harder all the time. To quote the Vancouver Sun, young, educated urban Canadians have many reasons to be angry with Ottawa for the way it has worsened the housing crisis. Madam Speaker, after so many failed housing programs, why should Canadians have any confidence in this government's latest iterations of failed programs?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Oh.
Oui, Madame la Présidente, vous m'entendez?
Yes, can you hear me? Thank you. I want to thank my colleague for his question. We are well aware that all Canadians from coast to coast want to access buying a home, and it's becoming impossible. Our recent budget gives $200 million to develop rent-to-own and a 2-year ban on foreign purchasing of property and other measures we're going to implement in cooperation with provinces and territories. The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, a young woman in my riding, Valérie Bellil, had a serious car accident about 70 kilometers from the nearest cell phone network. She had to pull herself out of her car and wait 30 minutes by the side of the road before a good Samaritan, Tony Jean, whom I thank wholeheartedly, stopped and took her to the hospital. That is the consequence of the lack of cell phone coverage in Mingani along Route 138. How many more accidents is it going to take before the minister pressures the CRTC to finally award the contracts required to complete the network? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. We know that connectivity, whether it be via internet or cell phones, is very important for our safety. In Quebec, in rural areas, especially along Route 38, the accident that occurred was awful, and I'm very glad that the person was able to escape. Internet comes with cell phone connectivity. We're going to work on this issue until it gets done. The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, it's unacceptable that in 2022, people in distress like Ms. Bélil are unable to reach emergency services. The lives of local residents, locally new, and tourists are not a secondary consideration. Ottawa is responsible for telecommunications. It is its obligation to make this essential service available everywhere. The CRTC is a year late in announcing who's going to be awarded the contract to implement the cell network. Why? Can the minister finally announce now the award of contracts for the implementation of cell coverage along Highway 38 between Sept-Îles and Kagasca? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're aware of the problem along Route 138, but that is a problem that we see throughout all of Canada. During the pandemic, we realized that this issue is even more important. We need to provide a network via internet and cell phone to all residents. I made a commitment that 98% is going to be covered by September 2023, and we're going to keep working on this until it is done. We are going to ensure cell and internet coverage.
Airports are becoming famous for long lines, for continuous flight delays, and for changing departure times. And that's because this government is still imposing out-of-date, unscientific restrictions on travelers. Yesterday, Toronto's airports called for their elimination so that staffing actually goes where it's needed. Our other countries have dropped these restrictions while ours are expected to stay over the summer. Will the government stop trying to make our airports famous with their incompetence and scrap the ineffective restrictions and vindictive mandates?
The Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, as a traveller myself, and I know many of our colleagues here travel regularly, we are experiencing long lines and delays at airports.
I'm going to have to ask the Minister to start from start. I couldn't hear what the answer to the question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Transport Canada officials have been working with CATSA, the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority's leadership, to ensure actions are taken to resolve the staffing issues leading to these delays. Madam Speaker, I am meeting with the CEO of CATSA on Monday to discuss this. We're witnessing delays across all sectors of our economy, Madam Speaker, which is a result of increase in demand, imbalance in our economy. We are working with our partners to ensure that we respond to all these delays and ensure that all resources necessary are available. We want to make sure that travelers who want to travel...
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
The decision to cling to restrictions and mandates, why is it such a secret? Will the minister tell this House, finally, what specific advice he's getting to keep them, when he got it last, when he's going to get it next? Will he table that advice in the House for all Canadians, or will he continue to hide it from Canadians while they're stuck in line at Pearson?
Speaker, the evidence is not secret, Madam Speaker. Everyone knows that vaccines save lives. In the United States, 165,000 lives would have been saved just during the Omicron crisis if they had had a better vaccination uptake. 165,000 lives, Madam Speaker, in the Omicron crisis, that's 50% more people than in any one of our riding in this House.
The Honourable Member for Dauphin-Swan River-Nipawin.
Madam Speaker, I think the government has forgotten about their federal mandates because every other province is removing theirs. These mandates are preventing essential federal workers from doing their job. I spoke to an employee from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency who was barred from providing the essential service of food inspection because this government won't let them. The Liberals don't care about science, they only care about division. Right. When will this government end their outdated mandates?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Madam Speaker, from the beginning of this pandemic, we made a commitment to Canadians that we will protect their health and safety. We have done that. We will continue to do that, and we have put in place measures to protect workers and our communities. And as circumstances change, we adjust these measures. We are currently reviewing the mandates, and we will come back to the House to report when these mandates will be reviewed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
More responses with no answers from this government. The historic town of Lunenburg has taken a massive hit due to reduced tourism numbers thanks to the pandemic. International cruise ships have finally returned to Nova Scotia's ports, but for some reason, CBSA has not restarted services in Lunenburg, which means the passenger ships cannot dock in the town. There are 7 other ports of entry in the province of Nova Scotia where CBSA has restarted their services, but Lunenburg is left out. Wow. When will the minister boost the local Lunenburg economy and do the right thing and open the CBSA up?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank my honourable colleague for his advocacy, and my office is in close contact both with him and the community in Lunenburg. As you know, Madam Speaker, over the course of the last number of weeks, I'm pleased to report to all members in this chamber that CBSA has been reopening ports of entry to meet the increased demand around trade and travel. This is good news, and we'll continue to work with all members to see that progress continues. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well done. Honourable Member for South Okanagan and West Kootenay.
Madam Speaker, Canadian businesses pay huge rates on their credit card transactions, almost twice as much as fees in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. In Budget 2022, the government admitted that Canada's high credit card fees have been hurting small businesses who were already hurt by the pandemic. The NDP has been calling on lower fees since back in Jack Layton's campaign over 10 years ago. And despite recognizing the problem, the Liberals just keep talking about more talks. When will the Liberals actually crack down on excessive credit card transaction fees and help small businesses?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, small businesses are the backbone of the Canadian economy. Before the pandemic, we cut their taxes from 11% to 9%. During the pandemic, we had their back. We supported 450,000 businesses and 5.3 million Canadian workers. Now we're going even further by targeting a new small business tax. We're working on reducing credit card fees. This is good news for small business and great news for Canadians and the Canadian economy.
A member for Nunavut.
This week, residents of Sanarayak said they haven't seen the $42.9 million that was delivered by the Baffinland Iron Mine Company to Inuit farms 4 years ago. This means that Inuit farms aren't getting the resources they were promised. Baffinland told media they can't provide details about where the money went. Nunavut farms that were promised contracts are being deceived by companies who are making massive profits and damaging the environment. What is this government going to do to stand up for the people and the land of Nunavut?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the very important question. We are engaged with the territory of Nunavut and all of the hamlets and communities that are in Nunavut to make sure that their interests are protected on so many fronts. We are guided by the Inuit Nunangat policy. I will commit to looking into the comments made by the member of Nunavut and get back to her ASAP. Thank you very much.
Member for Whitby.
Madam Speaker, it goes without saying that Line 5 is crucial energy infrastructure for our country and for our continental energy security. There is another court case in Wisconsin that is threatening the line's operation. Could the Minister of Natural Resources update the House on what he is doing to ensure the line continues to operate? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for the question. The continued operation of Line 5 is, as I have said, non-negotiable. We will take appropriate steps to ensure the continued safe operation of this critical infrastructure, and we will continue to work closely with the owner of Line 5. Canada and the United States continue to be engaged in a process under the 1977 Transit Pipelines Agreement to ensure the continued operation of Line 5. And until this issue is resolved, I will continue to raise it with my U.S. counterparts as I have been doing on an ongoing basis. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The lines are around the block at Service Canada centres across the country, and budding entrepreneurs are charging upwards of $50 an hour to stand in line to help people get that golden walk-in appointment. If you try to call the Service Canada passport line, you get a generic message saying long processing time, and then it hangs up on you. But when you go to the website, there's no mention of delays, there's no indication of a problem, leaving Canadians completely in the dark until it's too late in many cases. Will the minister admit this is a crisis?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for her question. Canadians are traveling again, and we understand that the lines are long, and this is difficult and stressful for many. That's why last weekend, 12 of the busiest offices across the country were over throughout the weekend, and Service Canada staff continue to work through weekends and through overtime to alleviate backlogs. More counters are being opened at passport offices every single day. The minister and officials continue to explore options to do more, and we continue to push to improve the service standards and help Canadians access the services that they are entitled to.
Before Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, Canadians deserve more than talking points. Gordon applied for his son's passport by mail in February. After a month, he made a request after request, online and by fax, simply for a status update. Then he called and was number 543, and after an hour, he gave up. So he appealed to his local MP, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, but even then, he couldn't get a status update. Clearly, the process is broken. Will the minister drop the talking points and fix this serious problem?
Yeah! Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for her advocacy for constituents. We do know that this is a frustrating time for many Canadians as they try to use the system. We have simplified the processing to replace expired passports, and have extended those that to extend them up to 15 years and treat them as renewals rather than new applications. We continue to find every avenue possible to address the needs of Canadians as they wish to travel again. If there is a particular issue that a constituent is facing, such as Gordon, I'd be more than happy to speak to the member about it and see how we can find.
Honourable member for Cumberland, Colchester.
Madam Speaker, we need some answers here, not talking points. So we'll go with this despicable or annoying question, I suppose. I've heard from Madison and Michelle. They applied on March 14th for travel on May 4th. They could have an expedited passport for extra money. Being held ransom, they paid. After over 400 phone calls and hours waiting on hold, they traveled 1 hour and 10 minutes to Halifax and slept on the floor overnight. This government is downloading their ineptitude on the backs of public service employees. When will they clean up this mess and put the service back in Service Canada?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for his question. And I appreciate him sharing the frustrations that many Canadians are facing as they try to embark on travel again to see loved ones throughout the country. With the easing of public health restrictions, Canadians are resuming their travel. Service Canada is experiencing unprecedented volumes in the demand for passports. Our current priority is to ensure that Canadians with planned travel are able to do so. And to avoid long lines, Canadians with no imminent travel should use either imminent travel or travel business days can apply by visiting over 300 Service Canada centres.
The honourable member for King Vaughan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canadians are lining up for days, attempting to renew their passports so they can reunite with their families after 2 long years. A constituent in my riding is feeling desperate. She is trying to visit a dying family member in the United States and is getting nowhere. Time is of the essence. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. Will this government have compassion and fix the passport backlog so Canadians
have the ability to say goodbye.
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for her question and her advocacy for her constituents. We have compassion for those who are facing the need for imminent travel, particularly when it is to visit a loved one facing dire health conditions. That is why proof of travel is needed and required in these cases in order to approach a Passport Centre or Service Canada office. Priority is being made for those who have imminent travel needs, and I encourage the member to reach out to me to discuss the issue further. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Joliette. Madam Speaker, the government is still doing more to harm our aerospace sector. As we saw in the budget bill, the luxury tax on private jets is really a tax on our aerospace sector. They want businesses to give them 20% of their sales and only get reimbursed months later when it turns out that the airplane was for export. That's $500 million that businesses will have to advance the government. When will the minister do something to stop burdening our businesses? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we recognize that the aerospace sector is facing long-term impacts from COVID-19. That's why we're allocating $1.75 billion over 7 years from the Strategic Innovation Fund to this sector. The funding will support projects totaling $2 billion in investments in Canada, including close to $1.6 billion in Quebec alone. It will also create more than 1,000 jobs in the Quebec aerospace industry and co-op placements for more than 6,200 students.
The Honourable Member. Well, unfortunately, my colleague seems to be reading from the wrong sheet. The luxury tax is supposed to apply to wealthy people who buy private jets, but that's not the effect of the act. For example, mines that buy a plane to transport their workers rent them out when they're not using the plane, but now they're going to have to pay the tax if renters use it for recreational ends 1 out of 10 times. A business trying to bring its travelers and its workers into remote regions shouldn't have to pay the same tax as a billionaire going to an island in a private jet. Will the government do something about this? Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for his question and his work on the Finance Committee. We have implemented a luxury tax on jets and on luxury boats because we know that everyone needs to pay their fair share. The pandemic has made things difficult for Canadians, and on this side of the House, we want to make sure that the 1% pay their fair share.
Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, several horrific cases have recently been reported of vulnerable Canadians who have ended their lives by medical assistance in dying for reasons such as inadequate housing and lack of access to care. That is precisely what the Liberals claimed would never happen. So, when will the Liberals acknowledge that so-called MAID safeguards are not being enforced, putting the lives of vulnerable Canadians at risk?
Yeah. Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. These issues are difficult, deeply personal, and touch the lives of everyone across this country. We would like to thank those who have lent their voices to this important national conversation. We look forward to seeing the findings and recommendations of the Special Joint Committee as well as the expert panel, which is due imminently. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, one such case involved an Ontario woman who ended her life by MAID after she could not find adequate housing. Her condition was not irremediable as required by law. Rather, she was vulnerable, desperate, and had lost all hope. So, do the Liberals believe that inadequate housing is an acceptable criterion for MAID?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to reiterate that there is an expert panel right now that is set to report imminently. There is a special joint committee in which the member opposite is a very active member, and we look forward to the findings of both in order for us to address additional issues that are likely to come up. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, we've heard stories from across the country of vulnerable Canadians who have received or are pursuing a medically assisted death for reasons like they can't afford housing, they can't access Indigenous services, or because they're poor. Is that what the government wanted when they let radical lobbyists dictate the policy? They've extended medical assistance in death to people with physical disabilities and mental illness, and now they want to extend it to minors. So will the government ensure that no more Canadians will be victimized by this medically assisted death regime?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, these issues, as I stressed earlier, are difficult, deeply personal, and touch the lives of everyone across this country. And we would like to thank those who have lent their voices to this important national conversation. We look forward to seeing the findings and recommendations of the Special Joint Committee, for which the member opposite is also a very active participant, as well as the expert panel report that we expect imminently. This is why we have ensured that further parliamentary review and independent expert report to study these issues closely before the expiry of the sunset clause, and we look forward to these reports, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Acadie Bathurst.
Député d'Acadie Bathurst.
The Honourable Member.
Le micro n'est pas.
The microphone doesn't seem to be on.
N'est pas en marche. The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charlemagne.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, businesses throughout my province depend on tourism. The pandemic has had a devastating impact.
The Honourable Member for Barry-Innisfil. The Honourable Member for Barry-Innisfil.
Madam Speaker, just a point of clarification as to what this member's role is. Is she considered a parliamentary secretary, or because, as you know, Madam Speaker, parliamentary secretaries cannot ask questions? I just need clarification. Thank you.
That the Honourable Member is from Longueuil-Charlemagne is not a parliamentary secretary. She is a deputy whip. She's not l'honorable député de Longueuil-Charlemagne.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charlemagne from the beginning, please. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Businesses throughout my province depend on tourism, and the pandemic has had a devastating impact on their work. But there is good news. On April 25th, tracing measures at the border were loosened. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism tell us what the impact of this excellent news will be on the tourism sector? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. Indeed, the tourism sector has been seriously affected by the global pandemic, but we have received very encouraging statistics. Canada recently welcomed 1 million travelers in a single week for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who works in the sector. I'd like to thank them for their resilience and for everything they do for our economy and to help people discover our beautiful country.
The number of small vessel reporting sites was at 400 pre-pandemic. This was cut to just 84 sites during the pandemic. As boating season opens up, boaters will have to travel hundreds of kilometers to report their vessel. The government is needlessly adding emissions, stifling our economy, and putting boaters at risk if the weather changes while traveling excessive distances to reach one of the few reporting sites. Speaker, when will the government prioritize border safety by reopening small vessel reporting sites?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my honourable colleague for his question and his advocacy on behalf of his constituents. The pandemic has caused a lot of disruption to many of our marine and other travelling sectors. As we have demonstrated from the beginning to Canadians, we've been there supporting Canadians, Canadian businesses throughout this difficult period. And as we are turning the corner from the pandemic, Madam Speaker, we are adjusting our measures. We are working with community stakeholders to ensure that we return to normal as quickly as possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Well, Speaker, this is ridiculous. Boaters in my riding simply need to cross an 800-meter-wide river to get to Michigan. But CBSA wants them to go 76 kilometers round trip just to check in. One constituent wrote me to say it would cost him $1,200 per trip just to meet this requirement. This will cripple tourism and day shopping during the busiest time of the year, hurting small businesses and communities like Wallaceburg, Mitchell's Bay, and Port Lambton, just to name a few. So, Speaker, will the government immediately lift the restrictions of marine points of entry?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Madam Speaker, thank you to the honourable colleague for that question. My colleague, Minister of Public Safety, and I are working closely to ensure that we are returning to normal as quickly as possible. We're ensuring that communities are safe, that they have the resources they need to access the businesses that they had. I know it's been difficult for the last 2 years. Canadians have demonstrated commitment to each other, to work together closely to ensure everyone's safe and to ensure that our economy is rebounding as quickly as possible.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Answer.
Honourable Member for Denity, Mississippi Churchill River.
Madam Speaker, following my question last month on the lack of cell service on the Hanson Lake Road, a constituent shared a heartbreaking story. Recently, he came across an unresponsive male in the driver's seat of a vehicle stopped on that road. He drove to cell coverage, called for an ambulance, and returned to the scene. By the time he got back, the man was deceased. Madam Speaker, this isn't a political issue. It's literally one of life and death. Will the minister approve today Saskatchewan's application to the CRTC for cell service on the Hanson Lake Road?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We know that it's very important that people be able to use the internet in Saskatchewan, Quebec, or anywhere in Canada. We know that mobile connectivity is very important, and it's at the very heart of our priorities in rural and remote communities. We have started a colossal effort with internet, and we will continue.
For Davenport.
Madam Speaker, Russia's illegal and justifiable invasion of Ukraine is not only a threat to European security, but also to the world's security. The NATO alliance has only become more important as we look to the future of transatlantic security. This week, Canada welcomed Sweden's foreign minister as their country faces the choice of whether to join the NATO alliance. Finland is also facing the same consideration. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs share with this House whether Canada would support Sweden and Finland's membership in the alliance?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this gives me an opportunity to thank our colleague for her excellent leadership at as chair of the Canadian NATO Parliamentary Association, work she does on behalf of all of us. Recently, the Minister of Foreign Affairs had a chance to meet with her counterpart in Helsinki, and even more recently this week with her counterpart from Sweden here in Ottawa. Let me be very clear, in the face of horrendous and illegal aggression by Russia in Ukraine, NATO is more united than ever. Sweden and Finland are among Canada's closest friends and NATO's closest partners. We would, of course, welcome their accession into NATO should they choose to do it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
Madam Speaker, Powell River Salmon Society in my riding is one of several nonprofits doing amazing work on local salmon enhancement and preservation. And the Minister agrees. But small local hatcheries have not seen federal funding increase for over 40 years, and they were ignored during all the federal consultations. The Liberals like to talk about saving the wild salmon, but they ignore the voices of volunteer-based hatcheries who do the work but are struggling every day. Why is isn't the minister supporting these successful and existing hatcheries now?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Oh, the Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I love the question because I just had a chance to go visit a local hatchery in Metro Vancouver and meet with the members and see the very important work that they do. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the protection of wild Pacific salmon populations is an incredibly important priority for British Columbians, and I know that the work that the hatchery groups do assists with that. We will be supported by almost $650 million historic investment in Pacific salmon, and salmon enhancement, i.e. hatcheries, is one of the pillars of that initiative.
And that is all the time for question period today. Orders of today, is that what I say?
We go to routine.
Yeah. Routine proceedings. Tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36, bracket 8A, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 25 petitions. These returns will be tabled in an electronic format, Madam Speaker.
Introduction of government bills. Statements by ministers. Présentation.
Presenting reports from committees.
Présentation de rapport.
Presenting reports from committees.
Dépôt de projet de loi.
Introduction of private members' bills.
De rapport de comité. Nous retournons à présent.